Hi, it's only me. Time's nearly 2:05. Still haven't heard from you. Can you just give us a ring, please? Let us know you're alright. Because at the moment I think you're dead. You just said on the telly that there's 3 million rains over. I think it's you. Bye.
Around the same time that her lover was dragging Kevin Whitaker's lifeless body into a ditch, Tony Tucker's mistress, Donna Garwood, was desperately trying to get hold of her man to give him a special birthday treat. The pair had met more than a year earlier at Raquel's nightclub in Basildon, where Tucker controlled the door staff. The pair began a passionate affair, and Garwood quickly became besotted, telling friends she had met the man she wanted to spend the rest of her life with. In my eyes, Tony wasn't the drug baron or villain he was made out to be, she says. He used to say, "They don't know me, so who are they to judge?" When we met, we just clicked and that was it. He was very romantic and showed me what life was all about. He was a little kid at heart, really. We used to go riding together and we was always laughing. Though Tucker had no intention of leaving his living lover, Anna Whitehead, he had become equally infatuated with wild child Garwood. He set her up in Pat Tate's old flat in Swanstead, and the two spent as much time together as they possibly could. He tried to keep her away from his business dealings, rarely discussing anything when she was in earshot, but it soon became impossible. It wasn't long before Donna knew most of Tucker's business. Despite her tender years, Garwood took easily the role of the mistress. She got used to not having her lover on tap whenever she wanted, to meetings becoming cancelled at the last minute, and unexpected frantic sex sessions whenever Tucker found himself with 20 minutes to spare. She also got used to never ever calling him at home to ensure that Anna never found out about them. Instead, if Tucker's mobile wasn't on, Garwood would call one of the other members of the team, all of whom knew about her, and asked them to pass the message on. Although Tony Tucker, Pat Tate and Craig Rolfe were the main driving force behind the firm, as their gang had come to be known, there was a handful of honorary members who were allowed to mingle in their social circle and become privy to many of their activities. One was the chief bouncer at Raquel's nightclub, though he preferred the title head of security, a wannabe villain and sometime thug who had a tendency to let his fist do the talking. A friend of Reggie Cray, he liked to keep the company of people a few good leagues of criminality above him. Another associate was Steve Nipper Ellis. Given the nickname Nipper because at just 5'5" tall, he was dwarfed by his companions. Ellis was the type of bloke who gave the business of crime a bad name, having picked up a handful of convictions for little silly robberies. His greatest moment came after he broke into a dry cleaning shop and stole £100 from the till. He was caught, but escaped from Southend Court, dislocating the shoulder of a policeman on the way, and went on the run. A few weeks later, he was caught red-handed as he tried to break into a home improvement centre. Crime was obviously not Ellis's strong point, but he had some useful contacts, was funny and good company, and the trio warmed to him. Pretty soon, he became part of the furniture and was tagging along everywhere the firm went. As the morning of Tucker's birthday, the 17th of November, became afternoon and then early evening, Garwood gave up leaving messages on his mobile and called Ellis to find out where he was. Ellis, coked out of his head and in a playful mood, couldn't help making a joke of it. "Tucker, he's probably giving his old lady one. Yeah, he's probably fucking the ass out of her right about now." It wasn't what Garwood wanted to hear. When she eventually spoke to Tucker, she told him how much Ellis had pissed her off. By his own admission, Ellis knew the remark was well out of order, but then so was Tucker's response. Tony thought he was the big hardman, the one who everyone respected, not embarrassed him. The most he should have done was come over and give me a slap, tell me not to talk to his bird like that, to show a bit of respect, Ellis said later. He said Tucker with Rolfe in tow went on the warpath. Still buzzing after the murder of Whitaker, the pair turned up at Ellis's house, where Tucker stuck a loaded pistol in his temple and threatened to kill him there and then.
So I'm doing the hoovering in the hall, front door's open, in walks Tony, he's grabbed me by the throat, he's sort of lifted me up, pushed me down onto the bed and he's sat across me and he pulled out a meat cleaver and I'm looking at him and he's going, "Your hand or your foot?"
As Ellis cowered in the corner, Tucker and Rolfe took their anger out on his house, smashing up everything apart from the television and video, which they decided to take for themselves. Finally, as a final act of savagery, both men defecated on the living room floor and spread their shit all over the walls, before driving off laughing hysterically. Pat Tate had missed out on the first round of festivities, but once Tucker had told him what Ellis had done, he was keen to join in. Tate had always suspected that Ellis had grassed him up over an incident where the firm had smashed up a grocery shop and beaten the owner when he tried to break up a friendly food fight a couple of weeks later. This was his chance to get his revenge. Ellis was found not to be at his own place, so Tate and Tucker decided to drop in on his parents. They threatened his father and told him they planned to cut off the fingers of Ellis's 15-year-old sister, one at a time, until he was man enough to face them. There was no way I was going to take that, said Ellis. I can look after myself, but when they started threatening my family, that was going too far. I went out and got myself a gun and a bulletproof jacket, and I went after them. I was coked up and whizzed up, and had it in my mind that I was going to kill them. I wasn't scared. The thing about Tucker is that at the end of the day, he's just a bully. I've seen him shit himself when a gun was pulled on him. I've seen him get beaten up, and I've heard him say, no more, please. Might only be small, but I knew I had to stand up to them. And I knew I had to get all three of them. If I killed one or two, the others would come after me. It had to be all three of them. The exact details of what happened next vary according to what version of events you deem most reliable. What remains certain, however, is that in the early afternoon of Sunday, 20th of November, Tucker and Rolfe made a complaint to the police that as they were on their way to a Dagenham snooker hall that Tucker had booked for a birthday party, they had been confronted in the street by a screaming Stephen Ellis, who brandished what looked like a sawn-off shotgun at them. With no weapons of their own, they had no choice but to make a humiliating retreat. An hour or so later, while Pat Tate was in his bath at his £120,000 Basildon bungalow, also getting ready for Tucker's party, a brick came crashing through the window. He peered out to see what was going on, and immediately saw a handgun being pointed directly at his head. As the gun was fired, he instinctively threw up his right arm in front of his face to protect himself. The bullet entered at his wrist, travelled up his elbow, shattering bone, tearing out lumps of tissue as it went. The would-be assassin stepped forward to fire again and finish the job, but his gun jammed, so he turned and fled. Later, as he was carted off to hospital, Tate was asked by a friend if he could identify the gunman. Tate nodded and claimed, "It was Nipper Ellis, Steve Ellis, and he's gonna die." News of the shooting spread like wildfire. Ellis's standing among the Essex underworld was soaring rapidly, while Tate and Tucker were fast losing respect. At Tucker's birthday party later that day, only around 20 people turned up. The previous year, there'd been around 200. The rest fearing a massive gun battle might erupt in its midst. No one had seen or heard of Nipper Ellis since a couple of days after the shooting. Before he'd gone to the ground, he left a message on Tony Tucker's answering machine. "Hey you cunt, this is Steve Ellis. I fucking just shot Pat Tate, and you're next. Now fucking leave my family alone, you fucking wanker." The firm, desperate not to lose face, were desperate to lure Ellis out in the open. They changed tactics. Rather than threats, Tucker left a sympathetic message on Ellis's machine, saying there was no point in any more violence. That Pat wanted him to come and visit him at Basildon Hospital, so that the whole thing could get sorted out. Even Ellis wasn't stupid enough to fall for that one, and stayed well away. A couple of days later, a nurse making up Tate's bed while he was in surgery found a handgun hidden under the mattress. Tucker had smuggled it in, and the plan was that the second Nipper stepped through the door, Tate would execute him, and then the gun would be immediately smuggled out and destroyed. But it wasn't to be. After the gun was found, Tate had his parole revoked and was sent back to finish his sentence, furious that he'd ended up going back to prison because he'd been the victim of a serious crime and was trying to protect himself. A few days later, Ellis was arrested in possession of a Smith & Wesson handgun. He was also found to be wearing a bulletproof jacket. Although he was the main suspect for the attempted murder of Pat Tate, forensic tests showed that this gun was not the same one. Instead, Ellis was charged with illegal possession of a firearm and a few weeks later sent to prison, where he continued to receive death threats from friends of Tate on an almost daily basis.